And that's cool. I'm gonna be trying to get as big as you can. So whatever you're.
Keep it real.
Welcome to episode 9 of Keep It Real. I'm your host, Alexis Pacheco, and with us tonight we have a new topic as well as a beautiful new in-studio live audience. We are filming here in Guttenberg, New Jersey, so let's take a moment to welcome all our beautiful viewers here in the house. And without further ado, let's jump into the show. As always, we want to share, encourage, learn, and bless all of the listeners to come. So I hope you guys came ready to receive and leave changed and different and blessed. Tonight, we will be discussing the risks and rewards of entrepreneurship. Nowadays, it's becoming more and more common for newer generations to move in this direction with their careers versus the typical 9-to-5 job that maybe some of us in older generations were accustomed to. Today, there are so many platforms, programs, tutorials, and overall opportunities available out there for people to start their own businesses that sometimes it's almost overwhelming because you don't know where to start. Even this term, entrepreneur, has really broadened over the years because you can literally turn any concept into a business now if you go about it correctly. So we at Keep It Real really wanted to shed light on this journey and what the process of entrepreneurship looks like to encourage and correctly, guide our listeners who might be considering starting their own business. Obviously, everyone's journey looks different, but for today's episode, our guest is a social entrepreneur, a civic leader, and a soldier. He is the CEO of Cortaditos, where he owns and operates 4 Cuban-style coffee shops in New Jersey, including one in American Dream, with over 60 employees. Prior to opening his business, he spent over a decade in the technology sector, working for Google, Microsoft, and Dell, where his responsibilities covered enterprise sales and technology for social impact. He is also the founder and chairman of the Cuban-American Alliance for Leadership and Education, which is a local nonprofit organization that was recognized in 2020 as the Nonprofit of the Year by the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. Our guest leads scholarship giving and leadership development programming for over 50 students. Also, as a civic leader, he's a member of the Cuba Study Group, which is a Miami-based nonprofit aimed at promoting civil society development in Cuba. He is also a member of the Cuba Emprende Foundation, which offers entrepreneurial training and business advisory services to Cuban entrepreneurs. If that's not enough, he is also a maritime enforcement specialist in the United States Coast Guard Reserve, and he holds the school record for most receptions in a single season of football for Monmouth University. So please join me in giving a Keep It Real welcome while I catch my breath to our guest, Adam San Miguel.
Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome, Adam. We are so happy to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Adam, it's clear that you're coming from a diverse background. I mean, your resume is literally all over the map in a good way. I had to keep up myself when going over your bio. And I think that that's awesome because from what I've observed, at least, you don't seem to let other people box you in, which is a quality that I try to emphasize as a minister when I preach, because in the world we live in, people are so quick to label us or try to put a lid on our capacity based on stereotypes, individual backgrounds, upbringings, or superficial attributes. So, as someone who wears many hats and who has come up, from a humble beginning, my first question for you tonight, Adam, is how do you guard yourself against people or situations that try to put limits on your entrepreneurial success or success in general?
Good question. So first, congratulations on this program, Alexis. It's really awesome that you do this. It's really awesome that it exists here in Hudson County. Not a lot of people are doing this kind of stuff, this podcast show, and this is a great forum that you have here.
Praise
so
God.
Congratulations
to
the both of you.
Thank you.
Entrepreneurial box, is that what the question was?
Well, yeah, how do you protect yourself from people who put limits on you?
It's funny, I think for me, the first group of people who attempt to put limits on aspirations that you may have, maybe your own family sometimes, unfortunately. Because their aspirations not be aligned with yours, and some of the decisions you make may not always be in line with what other people want to see you do or want for themselves. Not entrepreneurial-wise, but one of the toughest decisions that I made, it was fairly recently, that my mother was not a fan of, my father was not a fan of, my wife was not a fan of. I don't think anyone was a fan of this move, but at the age of 35, with Cortaditos just starting, working for, at that time, Microsoft, having this nonprofit, I decided to join the military, the Coast Guard Reserve in this case. And so it's something I wanted to do my entire life since I was in my early 20s. I was 16 years old when 9/11 happened, and I went to high school in Jersey City, just like you. So I still remember the day getting evacuated from downtown Jersey City as the towers were on fire, and it was pretty close, as you know, right, from where we were. And so that impression stuck with me, and I always had this desire to serve. And because of all these things that you mentioned in my bio, it just kind of life got busy. And then right around when COVID happened, I was reflecting, and I couldn't let that bug go. So, I decided to do it, and it was extremely, extremely unpopular. At the time, I had my second daughter born, so I had a 2-year-old and a newborn in the house. My mother, my father, my wife, and I was going off to boot camp. Yeah, no joke. So, I have a master's degree. I have 2 bachelor's degrees, and I'm in boot camp with 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and so it was extremely challenging. And I'll never forget the first night that I got to boot camp. You get on the bus, and the drill instructors come, and they're yelling at you and screaming at you, and the whole thing you see from normal boot camps, right? And the first night they don't give you anything to sleep on, right? So you just the clothes you got there, and then there's no sheets on the bed. And I never forget, I cried so much that first night. Not for anything else, but I just was thinking what Mariela, my oldest daughter, was thinking when she didn't see me the next day. And she was 2 then, so it really affected me. But, looking back now, of all the things you mentioned, working for the biggest companies in the world like Google and starting Cortaditos and the nonprofit that I founded, I don't know why, just wearing a uniform is fulfilling for me. And right now I'm active duty military, so there was someone going on parental leave in the station that I serve in, so I volunteered to do that for a few months, so I'm that as well. But anyway, so putting the box and people trying to define what is right for you, I don't know the secret sauce, but I think you just have to understand what always provokes curiosity in you and what always interests you, and then just kind of follow that a little bit. And when I went back to my emails, I would see exchanges with emails from many recruiters in the military for whatever reason. So like at 24, I was talking to the National Guard, like, hey, how do I sign up? And I almost went to sign up. And I got home and told my mother, and she, like a Cuban mother, got on her hands and knees, cried. He said, "Mijito, no lo haga." I'm like, this moment of like, the whole family went on alert and everyone, so I didn't do it. And then I would see another email with me in a Air Force Reserve, and then me in a Coast Guard Reserve. And I just said, like, obviously I'm interested in this. I keep going back to it. Am I going to regret not doing it? And then, because I'm 38 now, right, 38, yeah. at some point you age out. You can't just join the military at 60, right? So I'm like, I'm either gonna do this now or I'm never gonna do it. So I did it. So it's not entrepreneurial, but it is just an example in my life, many examples, but that's a pretty big one.
Family.
Now. Yeah.
Family. And, unfortunately, we know there's always going to be people out there that maybe don't fully grasp our vision. And we have to learn to navigate through that because it's our vision, not their vision. And just because someone can't see what God put in your heart doesn't mean you have to hold it against them. But with time and practice, you learn to just block it out and keep moving. For me, I come from a family with a business background, so in a lot of ways, I grew up with the mindset of treating everything that I engage with as a business, which has helped me on a lot of levels because when you take on projects with that mindset, then automatically you're gonna handle situations in a professional manner. You're going to bounce back and not take certain opinions personally because you know that emotions and business don't mix. And you're going to be prepared and not crumble every time a problem pops up because you know that that's part of business. So Adam, can you share with the audience some of the adversities that you experienced early on in your entrepreneurial journey as you began opening your Cuban-style coffee shops and how you overcame them?
Yeah, my entrepreneurial journey began with nonprofit. So a nonprofit is a business. It's just a not-for-profit business. And probably 10 years ago, maybe 11, is when I started putting this nonprofit foundation together. Back then it was called Hijos del Exilio. Now it's called the Cuban American Alliance for Leadership and Education. And it's difficult to run a nonprofit because it's, by nature of it, you're just putting a passion out there. You're trying to gather a community around a cause. And you're trying to, with the spare time you have after work, family, and everything else, trying to put meaningful work together. So that's my first foray into quote-unquote business. And I've always had a social characteristic to it. I never wanted to open a business just for the sake of owning a business. I always had good jobs that satisfied me in many ways and taught me many things and brought me many experiences and travels that I was very thankful for. But in that journey of trying to help and trying to do good and trying to have social impact, one of the people who would donate to the scholarship nonprofit gala that I have every year, that we have every year for CALLE, as we call it, the Cuban American Alliance for Leadership and Education, was a bakery/cafe, and it was called Sweets and Cortaditos. And so every year he would donate coffee, and my partner Andres now, he would donate pastelitos to the yearly scholarship gala. And so after 2 or 3 years of doing that, he sat me down one day because I used to go work out of the bakery when I was working remote some days, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing? You have this nonprofit foundation. You work for Microsoft. What are you trying to accomplish?" And we just had a heart-to-heart, and he said, "Hey, do you want to come into business with me and do this and take it to the next level?" And that's where Cortaditos was born. So for me, the journey wasn't, I had this entrepreneurial business passion. It was just I had a career that I had built in tech. And I had this social entrepreneurship project where I was helping students get scholarships, and we were building a leadership development program for them so that they can empower themselves to be leaders themselves. So we put them through workshops on public speaking, resume writing, interview skills, financial skills so that they know how to manage money, emotional intelligence. We would do personality assessments with them so they could understand their personalities and how to be better leaders. And through all that, it led me to meet my now partner, where I was presented with the opportunity to go into a business with him, and then once again express those experiences that I've had in building a nonprofit, in working in corporate tech, into this business. And so it has a very much social characteristic as well. And again, it goes back to the concept of my military story, where it was just following sort of an interest, a curiosity, which goes back for me to Cuba in this sense. And so I'm wildly passionate about it. I wasn't as a child, but as my grandparents started passing away, when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I kind of like had this awakening that got me onto a journey where I was very curious about Cuba, my roots, my past, and also the future and present of Cuba, and how I can help and impact. And so through those, just following that sort of curiosity hilo, right, thread, it led me down these paths, and every time I was in these paths, I would just give it everything I had. And so it wasn't this business idea that had me awakening. I didn't like watch a podcast and say, oh, I want to be in coffee. It was building a nonprofit, right? It was people seeing me put the gala together, give scholarships, working with the students, meeting with people around that, building community. And then he, Andres saw me and met me and was interested in bringing what I had to his coffee idea, and we just brought it to the next level. So if you go to one of our locations now, you see a very nice space. It's got a lot of culture. It's got a lot of life. It's got a lot of our Cuban culture in there. So that's how I got onto that journey, and that's how my entrepreneurial path began.
And were there any struggles?
Yeah. Did they clap after every question, or was that just a good answer? Are they trained to do that or no?
No,
Like
no,
is she
it was
pushing
just,
a button? Is there like a sign? Like
it's a great answer. It was a great answer. But were there any, because you said you went from doing your nonprofit and then essentially it was a partnership. So were there adversities in, doing a partnership with someone else? I was just trying to see if there were, struggles in your journey, or was it just literally smooth sailing?
No, there's always struggles. There's always struggles. They're like micro struggles along the way. And between me and Andres in the business, it just always worked very naturally. And I think that's a function of our intentions. So for me, the social characteristic of it. And when I say social, I just mean I don't sell coffee to make a buck, right? It's part of our business model. We have to earn money to fund the operation. But and no offense to anyone else, but if someone was like, hey, do you want to start an Italian coffee shop with me? I just wouldn't be of interest. I would still be working for Google, and I'd still have my nonprofit. It was the Cuba element that drew me into it. It was the ability to be able to express that social characteristic through our culture in another scenario. In this case, it was a for-profit scenario. It was working with the employees that most of them are very recent to this country from Cuba, which has drawn me even closer to that. And the vision of being able to spread that culture and that goodness through the things I believed in, the things that were important to me, is what drew me to that business. So the struggles happen always before that, right? Personally, professionally, to get to that moment. And we still have struggles today, right? It's not like there's no struggles. But there was no moment to get it off the ground. It was a struggle. No, because at that point I was 35. And going back to the things I try and impart on the students in our nonprofit, which is the financial freedom, financial literacy, how to manage your money and how to invest. At the age of 35, I was prepared for that moment. So it wasn't like, and we'll get into this later. I think we talked about this a little bit in the back here, of this vision of entrepreneurship from this romanticism. I think we're in this age now where entrepreneurship is very romanticized, and sort of that corporate job is like the villain and the death, right? But for me, it was kind of the opposite. I took a lot of the lessons I learned of how to build a strong culture, a strong foundation, save money, made very, very good money in the companies I worked for. But I always lived very modestly and meagerly. And so instead of having 2 cars, I would have 1. Instead of moving to a nicer house in a nicer neighborhood, I lived in Union City and grinded it out for $1,300 a month with my wife also making an income. So I would just live below my means, stack a lot of cash, give a lot of that cash to students for scholarships and for programs. We take them on 3 trips to Miami, DC, and then Havana. We haven't done Havana yet. We're going to do it soon. And so most of my money was invested there, and then just waiting for opportunities. And so when Andres presented me with this, I was ready professionally. I had studied, I had been in business, I had worked, I read a lot of books, I've got a lot of degrees, and it was a matter of just channeling it into that and going on the offensive when the time came right. So I didn't try to rush the process. I didn't try to live in my parents' garage with no money, doing some online thing, which maybe some people can make it work. It's not my skill set, right? I can't code the next Facebook application, which that business doesn't require too much capital, it just requires your time. A company like ours, a business like ours requires capital, right? We need hundreds of thousands of dollars to open up a nice coffee shop. That's just like a Starbucks. If you Google what does a Starbucks cost to make, the average Starbucks costs $3.50 to start, right? So if you don't have $3.50, you're not starting a Starbucks. So for me, most of that banging my head against the wall and most of those struggles were happening in my 20s through all the different things I was doing with all the corporate experience I was having. But when it came to starting Cortaditos, I had an operator of the business already who was doing it, so he had experience. Wasn't doing everything right. We still don't do everything right, but we just put our brains together and said, what do you do well? What do I do well? And he does some things excellent, and he does some things terribly. And I do some things excellent, and I do some things terribly. And it just so happens that I found a great match with a person who's a really good person, family man, and he puts up with me.
Let it out.
If you,
Let it out.
the people mean a lot to me, if you can tell, right? When I start talking about certain people, I can't. So, so if you see him, don't
Don't tell him.
don't tell him.
I won't. We won't send him the link. But thank you for sharing. As an entrepreneur, it's so important to be transparent about your journey because that's what inspires others and gives them hope and also gives them guidance if it's the right direction or not the right direction. But like you were saying, it's important to look at the full picture of risks and rewards. Just because you want to do something doesn't mean that you're anointed to carry it out, which is why we have to keep it real with ourselves, be self-aware about our strengths and weaknesses, and take all of those details into account before jumping into entrepreneurship. And if we're honest, it's in that evaluation process where a lot of people choke up because they can't tell the difference between being qualified and playing it safe. Some people are qualified, but they don't want to risk the comfort of having a steady paycheck. Some people are qualified, but they prefer to have, a set structure, schedule, business hours. So there's a lot of different factors. You covered a bunch now. But what I wanted to ask next, and you kind of touched it, but if you could just elaborate more, is as someone who spent over a decade in the tech world first, can you share what your evaluation process looks like before you transitioned into the nonprofit and the entrepreneurial career change?
Yeah, what I evaluated and what was this? Just evaluation?
Yeah, what was the transition like, the evaluation process before you pulled the trigger, basically?
The evaluation process, so from corporate tech into nonprofit, there was no evaluation because I never left it. I was doing corporate roughly 9 to 5, a lot more, work a lot of hours, and then 5 to 9, as they say now, right, was nonprofit. So it was I just worked a lot. I was just always working or studying. And so when it came time to pivot, the world sort of did it in its own way, right? When you're following your curiosities and your interests, those doors start to just happen. Like I met Andres, and he proposed it to me. We put the great business together. We started a business. We opened the second one, so we opened Union City location in 21. We opened American Dream in 22, and then in 23, if you weren't aware, tech had a bunch of mass layoffs, right? I was part of those layoffs in Google, so I was offered a very generous package to leave with stock and things like this, and so it was this sort of like, okay, now it's time to get fully in it because I used to work Google virtually many times because it was during COVID, and so I'd be in the kitchen, on the calls and trying to manage everything, the pataritos are coming out, and I'm on a conference call, and someone's asking me a question, and I'm on my FaceTime with someone else. So it was just for 2 years, it was a guerrilla warfare. I was working every day. I would be at the coffee shop before we opened, probably around 5:45, 5:30 in the morning, working, opening it, and then once around 9 o'clock came around, I would go home or go in the back and get on my Google work, and then lunchtime I'd be here, and then it was just a complete mess until we got things sort of organized. And then in January of this year, Google said, okay, it's time to get real, go do your thing, and since then, I've been full-time in Coast Guard and Calle, but I've been in the things that I care about most, which is Calle, first and foremost, Cortaditos, and then obviously being a member of the military, so.
Yeah.
So there was not really evaluation. It was just, there it is. No, there wasn't an evaluation. Everything that was just in front of me, I would just give it my all.
It was, God opened the doors for you to just keep walking it out.
Correct.
Essentially.
Running really hard. I wouldn't say walking it.
There you go. Yeah. Well, thank you for keeping it real. I want to switch gears a little. We've jumped around, but one of the things that I mentioned it to you when we were chatting is that this passion that you have, as a civic leader, and I think it's an important quality to highlight because a lot of the time people start their own businesses, they get so consumed by it that they forget the importance of giving back and they lose touch with their communities. So something that I learned early on in my life that has stuck with me is the blessing comes when you're a giver. And when God sees that he can trust you with money or connections, whatever it is, you open up yourself to a capacity of receiving more. And that's because he knows you're going to use those blessings to bless others. If you roll with me, you know that if I do well, everyone around me is going to be taken care of, because I live this out in my personal life. And I have friends in the audience, you can ask them. And when you're blessed, that trickles down through you to other people if you allow it to. And that's why when selecting a guest for this topic, it was important not to just pick, a successful entrepreneur, but more so we wanted to bring someone on who managed to be successful while also maintaining that social impact like you have. And as a second generation Cuban American myself, I'm a little biased because your story, hits home for me when I've heard it. I heard it in a taping. And so I wanted you to just take a moment to share with the listeners who don't know your background story. If you could share briefly about your heritage and how that impacted your role as a civic leader. I know that story with your grandfather and the dentist and all of that. So, just the highlights, if you will, to just
Sure.
show what I'm, talking about.
Sure. Like many people in this area, and especially in Hudson County, my parents and my grandparents and my aunt, everyone was born in Cuba except me and my brother. And as a young adolescent, I think at least me, I was very independent. I used to reject what my parents, they were not cool, I was cool, So anything they liked to do or liked to listen to music, and they were speaking Spanish, I didn't want to speak Spanish. And if they listened to the Spanish music, I didn't want to listen. But as you get older and you start maturing, you start developing an appreciation. And I usually people know I'm a very intense person, so when something's interesting to me, it's like, just because I go all in on, this is my personality, I go all in on things. So I go all in on that curiosity and that passion. And apart from that, I've always been blessed with good people around me. So good people that always had this idea of giving. And I never forget, in one of my corporate jobs that I had, a company called EMC was the best company I ever worked for. And the guy next to me was a friend of mine. We're looking at our paycheck one day, and he's like, well, we made about the same thing back then. I was like 24, 25 years old, and I'm like, well, this is how much I had. How much is he? And we're just comparing our checks, and he's like, well, I took out 15% to give to my church. Then I took out another 10% because I donated to this nonprofit that my family and I have in Africa. He's Kenyan. And then from there, I have this, and I said, what the hell? What do you mean you're giving? What'd you do? 15% of what? 10% of what? And so, at an early age, I was exposed to people who gave money and gave time and tried to impact others through things they cared about. And so for me, I just said, oh shit, I should do this I should start thinking about what I'm doing. And so little by little, you just surround yourself with more people who are thinking of good ideas and how to help and how to change and how to build impact and help society in whatever way you care about. And so little by little, I got down that journey, and I kept feeding that journey until the point where with people I worked with, or colleagues I had, built this nonprofit, and it's been extremely fulfilling. And I always say that if it wasn't for my two daughters, like wanting to see them grow up and having them have my presence in their life, that I would be fine if I just died today because of the nonprofit that I built and the people that I've impacted. And I don't mean from a dollar perspective. I don't mean from this esoteric, like, far away thing. I mean because there's people that I know for a fact that my existence has helped their life. And that, I think, is the essence. And I think that's the essence of a successful life. So we talk about entrepreneurship, and I do want to make Cortaditos nationwide, worldwide, and make it so this is like this version of maybe like a cultured, sexy Starbucks, if you will, a lo cubano, and that's the vision, and that's cool, and I'm gonna do fun things with that. But I can tell you now, like I said, if it wasn't for my two daughters, just for those two girls, I'd be fine if a bus hit me outside this door, because I'm at peace, very much at peace, because there's people who, I've impacted their lives. They'll call me to cry on my shoulder. It's happened, right? Kids getting kicked out of their house, coming to my house, just because they know they can rely on me. The business is cool, earning good income is cool, but we're Cuban, so I'll reference something that Pitbull was on this. Everyone knows Pitbull, Mr. Worldwide, Dale. He was asked a question on stage, and he said, and he was telling a story that his friend told him. He said, money's not money can't make you happy, right? Money can't make you happy. And his friend said, no, you're wrong, Pitt. It can. You just got to give it away. Yeah. So you asked about the impact, and so I think our community is very bad at giving back. I think our community is very bad. I mean, Hispanics, Latinos, Cubans, whoever group we want to call it. I think we're very, very bad at social impact. I remember when I was starting the nonprofit and we had a gala, and it would be like, $100, $150 for the gala, and I was like, and then you get the questions, what kind of food are you gonna have? Who's playing in the band? I'm like, does it really matter? Like, that's not what we're here for. We're trying to do something good for the students and And so, you realize that our community needs a lot of mind shift change in terms of how we allocate time, funds. I think in our community, it's like you give it to the politician, you give it maybe to the church, and then that's it, right? Everyone else is just like, but when you care about a cause, whatever it is, right? Cancer, and medio ambiente, dogs, whatever is the thing that is curious for you, there should be board service should be talked about, right? Like what nonprofits are you associated with? How much percentage of your money do you give? Not a dollar amount, because everyone makes different, but percentages are all relative. So if you make 1% of 50, of 100, of 500,000, it's all relative. We can all do it, but we don't. No one thinks like that, right? So it's always, what are you giving me? And I think our community, I'm hoping my example in the next generation inspires more people to be philanthropic and more people to want to make meaningful change in the world through their meager or many means that they have.
Yeah, I love it.
You don't have to clap.
I love it.
This is how I feel.
I get it. All the Cubans I know, they're gangster. They come here, they crush it, they have the craziest stories, and they build a legacy. And the ones that I know a lot that do give back, but I totally get what you're saying also. And I think that it's important wherever we come from that we don't lose sight of that, everything that you're saying, that we're kind of spoiled as Americans, that we forget about where our ancestors came from or what they had to go through to come here for us to be so blessed as we are, despite, what everyone complains about in social media. We're super blessed, and, people who came before us, sacrificed a lot for us to be here and to be this blessed. So it's important to not lose sight of that and to keep, like you're saying, producing that for future generations to come. So today I wanted to use this opportunity to remind our listeners, take the vision that God has sowed into your heart, carry it out, be successful, follow your dreams, but don't stop there. Be a blessing to others in whatever you do or wherever you go. Your gift, whatever it is not to be swallowed up by you and your family. It's to be shared with this world. This world has a lot of people who are lost, and they need whatever your gift is. So just keep that in mind in whatever your next project is, in Jesus' name. And Adam, if you could have any last words of encouragement to our viewers about anything we spoke about today.
I don't know if we hit the topics that you wanted to hit on, so I apologize. She's like, what about business? Like, how do you make coffee? I'm like,
No.
We buy it here, we sell it there. No. I don't know. As you mentioned your closing remarks, this story of Warren Buffett, who's a wealthy investor, one of the wealthiest investors of all time. Very old now. He's like 80s or something, but he's still like in the investing thing. And so everyone kind of looks to him as like what stocks and what investments to make. They asked him, I think he was in front of college students, maybe. It's on YouTube somewhere, you can find it. They asked him, what's your definition of success? And he talks about the money versus not thing. And he basically said that he knows a lot of people who have a lot of money, but he doesn't consider them successful. And so he recalls a story that was told to him by one of his friends who's a Holocaust survivor on what their definition of success was. And he said they hid her. She was a Jewish person, and she had a family that hid her from the Nazis in World War II. And so the story is that his definition of success is if you have people who would hide you in that scenario. And he said, I know a lot of wealthy people whose own children wouldn't hide them in that scenario, right? Because there's just not that level of love. They would save themselves first. But I truly feel successful because I would hide a lot of people. And I think a lot of people would hide me too, so.
Praise God. Well, I love it. Thank you for sharing. And we're going to open up the floor now to some questions.
So if you guys have any questions, if you haven't submitted one, I encourage you to do so now. Maria Elena is out in the audience. But we did get a question from somebody in the audience that says, having a finance background, for someone who is still working on building capital, do you have any advice for getting more capital/money? Example, partners, loans, etc.
Someone's in finance and they're working on getting more capital.
I think what they mean is because of your background in
Yeah.
building your businesses in finance, what would be your advice to gaining more capital?
Let's see. So to gain more capital, there's basically two ways. One is the capital's growing on its own. Is the person here, or is this?
Yeah, but they're anonymous questions.
Yeah,
Okay,
they're
sure.
anonymous.
Okay. That's what I was gonna okay, no worries. So you either put your money to work, or you put yourself to work, or both, right? So one is, are you maximizing how much you're earning? And in this category, you have your earning and what you spend, right? So this gap, you have to make it as big as you can. So whatever you're spending, try and cut it. Wherever you live, reduce that income. Whatever car you have, sell it. Ride a bus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a good book from Dave Ramsey. It's called Total Money Makeover. It talks about like it's a very basic book, but it's a very a conservative approach to financing. So the point is, don't spend a lot, try and make a lot. So spend little, right? And those examples that I gave, you should go into detail on your own budget. But spend less, don't get the nice car, get the used car. If you can go without a car, go without the car, ride the bus. I still ride buses. And live as long as you can with your parents, and then live in a cheap apartment, and then in a cheaper one, and then when you get the raise, still live in the cheaper one. And then over here, try and maximize your income by doing a few things. One is investing in yourself. I invested in myself a lot in my 20s. So education, experiences that are fulfilling for you, but also educational, travel, master's degrees, courses, et cetera, to make yourself worth more in the market. And then the second part to that is, how often are you working? Do you do 9 to 5? Well, get another job. Do you have another job? Well, do Uber, right? So the point is to maximize as much cash as you're bringing in, spend as little as you can, donate some. And then on this side, when you have that, put it to work. And then here you have a bunch of different investment options, right? So the easiest and quickest one would probably be just a normal mutual fund, unless you want to get aggressive and research specific stocks to get a little bit more risky. And you could, tech is always a good industry. I still have Google stock, I still have Microsoft stock, and a few other companies that I've worked for or invested in. And so here, the money's working for you. Real estate's okay, but if you want to start a business, it's probably going to be tough to pull it out in the short term. So I would say to this person in the crowd, make as much as you can by doing an array of activities and finding jobs that's going to maximize that pay. Spend as little as you can, legitimately. Don't go to bars and forget the Friday nights and stop, all that Ubering everywhere and going out to eat, all that stuff that costs money, that chips away at your ability over time to invest. And then invest it, right? Either in some sort of mutual fund. There's one that's called VOO. It's a Vanguard mutual fund. It probably performs the best of all mutual funds, which is 12% roughly, maybe a little bit more year over year on your money. And then again, if you want to get risky, there's specific stocks you can pick and ride with them. But you have to have a time horizon where you're going to pull that money out. So if you want to go to business in 5 and 7 and 10 years, right? Then put a plan for 5, 7 to 10 years. And do this over and over until you're bored of it, until there's money stacked up, and until you've networked so that you can use that money wisely. But I'm happy to go into more detail offline if you want to come out from behind the scenes.
Awesome.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
I
no,
think
that was
so.
good. Thank you.
think so.
Another question was, how did football shape your mindset and prepare you for your future?
Yeah, tremendously. So my work ethic comes from my football days. I still wake up at 4:30 to go to the gym. I still prepare for life and business and different endeavors, projects like I prepared for football, which was training myself, training my mind, watching film, purposely studying certain things, right? It wasn't just, you didn't just show up on the field and mess around and hope you're the best. I broke school records. I was always all conference. I was always the captain because of a certain way I prepared and I went about the way I conducted myself, and I do the same thing for most of the projects that I'm involved in, and that naturally translates to success, right? It's people look for the success, the moment of celebration. I've never looked for that moment of celebration. I've always looked for like the moment of sacrifice and grind. I just love grinding. I love it. I love being in the trenches. I mean, if it's not abundantly apparent from 35 years old and enlisting in the military and being next to like 18-year-olds getting screamed at and doing push-ups and running around, I don't know what else. So if you have to take one thing from sports that I did is I really, really always enjoyed training for the moment. Because when I got to the moment, it was always like I was uber confident. I just knew it. There was like no chance that the person in front of me was going to beat me because I had the advantage of all the training, all the preparation. So if you do that for business and other projects, you'll be successful. So the question is, how do you do that? I read a lot of books, so I prepare my mind. I just show up and start talking, right? Like this year I've probably read, just to give you an example, I could take out the list right now, but it's over 20 books this year, right? So on top of magazines, on top of newspapers, quarterly business reviews, things like that. So I prepare my mind a lot for success in the areas that I operate in. So it's not just, nothing's left to chance. Nothing that's why it sounds like it's like all just like, oh, I did this and that and that. Because I didn't mention the 4:30 morning readings, right? I didn't mention the podcast while I'm working out. I didn't mention all these little things that go into training for the moments of, how did Cortadito start? Like, it was easy because I've been training for the past 15 years for it. So that's the football analogy. Great question.
Awesome. How do you think social media changed the way entrepreneurs invest and carry out business practices?
I think social media just gives you a free platform to market. It's like the only marketing budget we have at Cortaditos, which is very small. But I also think it's like a double-edged sword. You have to be able to use it and then like get away from it, because you can fall into the trap of, and I fall into it as well sometimes, is constantly being on it and constantly reviewing and liking, and it's like, hey, and you just never get off it, and then you're not doing the preparation, because social media is not business, unless it's your business, but it's not our business, it's not my business. So you can get trapped in all the back and forth on it and not be doing the things that people want to hear about on social media, right? They don't want to hear about me liking or responding. They want to know, or they are attracted to Cortaditos, and to make Cortaditos or Guy or whatever successful, I have to do other things besides liking and following and everything like that. So it's important to leverage it and then get it away so you can get back to work.
Awesome. That's all we have time for tonight, but thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Adam, for sharing your journey with us on tonight's episode. One of our previous Keep It Real sponsors, A2 Interior, they couldn't make it to tonight's filming, but they wanted us to give you a gift on their behalf as they made this purchase with their commitment to Kaya in mind. So,
Do I take it out now?
No, you don't have to. I don't know what's in there, so just open it later. Let's just keep that later. But thank you again for keeping it real with us. Can you please let our audience know where your locations are for the coffee shops?
Yeah, Cortaditos Coffee, we're in Union City on 45th and Park Avenue. We're on 77th and Bergenline Avenue. We're in the American Dream Mall, right across from Big Snow, which is a ski slope in the mall. And we're in Belleville, New Jersey on 138 Washington Ave.
Awesome. And how can they find out about Kaya events and stuff?
Yeah, so our social media is Kaya.org, handle CAALEORG, or the website CAALE.org. And Cortaditos has a website and social media you want. Cortaditos Coffee is the handle, and CortaditosCoffee.com is the website.
Awesome. So thank you again for keeping it real with us. Everyone make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media at Keep It Real Talk Show. You can also follow us on Spotify now, where we is it episodes and podcasts?
No, it's just for the podcasts.
We gotta get the episodes up there. I don't know.
Right now, Spotify is just for the podcast.
Just follow us and you'll be surprised to see what you're gonna find on there. So our next episode will be in December. Stay tuned for updates on that. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, keep it real.